deadline live stream. Hope you're all doing well. You can see by the title of this video that I have made a transfer. I thought being deadline day in the football world, I would bring that into the FPL world and make one at about 11 p.m. last night. A bit of a panic transfer, but we are going to go through why I done it. Still, right now, don't know necessarily if it was the right move, but I've done it nonetheless. So we'll go through my transfer, but importantly, it's a deadline live. It's all about you guys. It's all about me trying to help your teams out. Any questions that you have going into this 11 a.m. deadline, if you didn't know already, the deadline is, what's that, in about 2.5 hours time. So we're here early doors for the next hour and a half up until about 10 a.m.-ish. But realistically, we should get through everything over the next hour and a half, fingers crossed anyway, because I'm going to get hungry otherwise. So let me know any questions you have in the chat. And as always, if you're looking forward to it, make sure you drop a like on the stream. And of course, smash that subscribe button. I said to you guys before in the previous one last week, it was a bit of an audacious goal. I said I wanted to hit 18k before the international break. We're not going to hit it, but if you can help along the way, it would always massively be appreciated. So get in the chat. Let me know if you're tuning in. Put a poll in. Let me know if you're wildcarding going into game week 3. I'll be really interested to know what people are doing. I was tempted at one point, but then I thought to myself, international break, so much can happen over that period. Didn't really feel comfortable activating the wildcard, but it doesn't mean a wildcard in game week 4 isn't on the card. So we will touch on that, of course, in this stream. But I can see some familiar faces in the chat. Milsh Trentley, hope we're doing well, mate. JP, hi, mate. How close is Haaland versus Watkins captaincy for you? Personally, I don't think it's close. I would definitely go for Erling Haaland. Based on the sales of Watkins, having Watkins in itself is a little bit of a differential. I think I actually want to see Watkins play more than 65 minutes. I think it will happen this week, most likely. But I think captaincy is good if you want to go for Watkins. But personally, it's still Erling Haaland. You know you're getting 90 minutes from him. And you know, I'm not going to say he's in form, but I just think he's looking sharp so far this season. I think just having Watkins in itself is good enough based on the sales that we've seen going into game week 3, which I am really surprised about the amount of sales out for him. Sam's saying, hi, Nacho, who to bench? Eze, Rogers, Isak, or Smith Rowe? Or Sam's, stick around, because there's a small chance I may have all 4 of those in my own team, and I'll show you what I'm leaning towards right now. Cheekster, hope you're well, my friend. JP, I have Isak, Gordon, and Murphy. What is the priority of selling and to who? What game weeks should I hold the rest here? Well, personally, I think right now, naturally, Murphy is going to be more of a priority, but because he is cheaper, there's less routes for you to go to. For me, if you don't have a Rogers or a Smith Rowe, that could be quite a nice little move, Murphy to one of those two to enable yourself a player for this game week. But again, if you just bench him Murphy this week, I'll just keep him bench. Start Gordon and Isak against Spurs and then reassess after the international break. I don't think Gordon and Isak are desperate sells. I don't think Spurs, I think they're good this season. I don't think they are absolutely watertight defensively. They always give up chances to the opposition. X4C, hope we do well, mate. Jenkins, CJ, LW. Start Smith Rowe, Rogers, struggling to decide. I have that same debate and we will come on to that in a minute. JP's asking, is Jackson an under-the-radar pick? Now that Osman's not signing, I do think that he is a bit of an under-the-radar pick. I didn't get why people were going Jackson beforehand because Osman did look like it was potentially going to happen. Now that it isn't, Jackson could be back on the cards. But of course, João Felix can play as a 9. That's probably it in terms of options for Enzo Maresca, Enzo Maresca. So I do think Jackson is a consideration absolutely for your teams. I do think he's an under-radar pick. Tor is tuning in from Norway. Hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate that. From Norway, I need to pay a visit to Norway. I've never been before. David, hope you're well. Flick, hope you're doing well. Solar Wind. Hey, Mikolenko, Dunk, or Kwanzaa to start with? Definitely not Kwanzaa. Dunk, of course, has a tough old fixture, so I'm probably going to answer that with Mikolenko. I think that's much the better fixture of all of them going into this week. Lots of good stuff in the chat. Lots of good stuff. Start Sells or Sanchez, mate. Roar is asking. I would start, personally, Sells. I do not back this Chelsea defence at all. It looks like Sells is the number one for Nottingham Forest. I think Nottingham Forest have a good fixture against Wolves. Not a great fixture, but a good fixture. So for that, I think I would lean towards Sells myself. So guys, keep putting your questions in the chat. I'm going to come on to my team. I'm going to show you what I've done with my team because, as I mentioned, I am not 100% happy with it, but I made the move nonetheless, and I feel like I need to have a little bit of therapy right now, maybe go through a few things with you to kind of air out why I've done it, and hopefully you guys maybe agree with what I've done. Let me just get rid of the poll right now because we're going to obviously be putting some more bits in there. So, as always, make sure to drop a like on the stream if you're watching it right now. Really do appreciate it. We always aim for 50 likes. If we can hit that, that is always massively appreciated. So, let's get into this team because, guys, transfer's been made. Transfer has been made. So a little bit of a update right now. I'm going to give you a bit of an idea on what we look like in game week 2. So game week 2, team looked like this. Not too bad at all. 81 points. And I had an Nkunku problem. It's safe to say 1.5 million in the bank, 1 free transfer. Now coming into game week 3, I felt that I could roll my transfer over the international break, reassess in game week 4 with 2 free transfers available, and it absolutely was the plan. However, I looked at game week 4, and it was, of course, some good fixtures for certain players. We have got Liverpool home against Forest, great. Man City against Brentford, great. Villa against Everton, and of course, Crystal Palace at home against Leicester. And I felt like what I've seen in the opening few game weeks, Eze was one of those players I absolutely felt that I needed for game week 4 because he ticked all of the boxes. Guaranteed game time, phenomenal fixture, great start to the season. Even though he's not returned, I always look at the underlying numbers and I feel like he's been very unlucky not to have any returns. And I looked at the fixtures coming up and I felt to myself, do I want a piece of Brighton? Absolutely. But who the hell is the one to buy? Because they've been buying more players during this transfer window and we have no guarantees exactly which one is the best pick. So I was thinking to myself, Brighton in game week 4 could be great, but if I roll my transfer, I don't really know which one to go for. Palace, I know exactly who I want. I want Eze in that team. I've got my Fulham players. Liverpool, the only one I don't have is Salah, and that is going to require me selling Erling Haaland pretty much to get there. And that would then mean selling Haaland at home against Brentford, which to me just doesn't make any sense unless you're wildcarding. And look at the rest of the fixtures. Villa at home against Everton. That one is going to be completely dependent on what we see from Ollie Watkins in game week 3 and, of course, the consideration for the Champions League. So I started to think to myself, if I roll my transfer going into game week 4, the one player that I just cannot imagine me not bringing in, based on everything that I've said, is going to be Eze at home against Leicester because he has the guaranteed game time. Liverpool signing Chiesa. Does that mean that we could see some minutes risk for Salah? We've spoken about how Gakpo's going to take minutes from Diaz. Darwin Núñez is going to take minutes from, of course, Jota. But nobody's in this team to take minutes from Salah. But now, with the Champions League on the horizon, Chiesa, a player that can absolutely operate on the right-hand side. Could we maybe see, just saying, Salah's minutes get slightly rotated, maybe comes off 10 minutes before the end rather than playing the full 90. So all these things coming together, I felt, I want Eze regardless of my team. Nkunku's falling in price. And I had the problem last season where I held on to players who kept losing value, like Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford. So I thought to myself, let's just get it done. Is Eze away against Chelsea a bad fixture? Absolutely not. So as of right now, Eze is starting and he is in my team. I made the transfer last night before the price drop. Nkunku out, Eze in. Doesn't mean that my team is any stronger this week. I'd probably argue not, because it means that I have benched Smith Rowe controversially. Everybody's bringing him in. I've already owned him, but I look like I might be having to bench him because Eze versus Smith Rowe for me is a no-brainer. I still think I would much rather play Eze. Guaranteed 90 minutes on a lot of the set pieces. Chelsea team is not watertight defensively at all. Of all the fixtures, I cannot see Chelsea keeping a clean sheet at all. So I went early. I brought in Eze. It's forced my hand a little bit for game week 4. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. We're going to come into this in a bit more, but I want to make sure I touch on some of the questions in the chat. This, of course, needs to be discussed a bit more, but Eze's in, guys. Smith Rowe on the bench. Let me know your thoughts. Need a water after that. Whew. Start Aina or Robinson. Aina probably has the better fixture at home against Wolves, but Robinson probably has that a little bit more about him in terms of attacking potential. I think I probably would go for Robinson myself. Edward, morning. Hope game week 3 goes well for you. Only one question for me. Play Muniz, triple Fulham, or Rodgers? I think if you own Muniz, you start Muniz. His shot volume has been fantastic so far. If I try and bring up some of his underlying numbers for you guys, I want to make sure I do deep dive into some of the stats as well, because I think this is obviously a reason why you're here as well. So looking at everything for forwards over the course of the 2 games, in terms of total shots, Muniz is top. Hopefully you guys can see this. Yes, they have been low XG chances because he's had 9 shots, a total XG of 0.39. But I really do like Muniz. I think he has all of the components for a good forward, a good FPL forward. And if I had this debate between the two, it would be Muniz with a favourable fixture, of course, against Ipswich. Would you start Doku over Nico Williams for more attacking potential? For this game week, I probably would do, yes. I think Doku is an okay pick. The problem you have here is, of course, do you think he's going to start? So if you're on about attacking potential, then yes, I think Doku is the answer. But overall pick, Nico Williams, I expect will start for Forest. Let me know in the chat, guys, if that is a bit of a rotation risk. Otherwise, personally, being a safe FPL manager, I probably would just start Nico Williams if I'm just looking for a more safer pick, because we know Doku's minutes could be a bit of a risk coming into this week. Jota captain or default Haaland? For me, even though Man United are quite a ropey team at times, I still prefer Erling Haaland as captaincy as opposed to Jota. Bench one of Trent, Porro, Robinson and Aina. Well, Trent you just never bench if you're paying 7 million for a player like that. For me, the obvious one to bench will be Pedro Porro based on the fixture, but of course, he offers that attacking potential that maybe the other 3 do not offer. Sorry, the other 2 in Robinson and Aina. So if you're going to go safe, I think the answer is Trent, Robinson and Aina. But again, if you're paying that much for a defender, of the ones that I would drop, I probably would drop Aina and I would start Robinson. Ashley tuning in from South Korea. Hope you're doing well. GP, as a Chelsea fan, I'm happy we didn't get Osimhen. Interesting. I, for one, am a little bit concerned that we didn't have, that we haven't secured Osimhen. I think that is a forward that we then keep for the next 4 years. I think Jackson's great. Can we win the Premier League with Nicholas Jackson? The answer is no in my eyes. So I think Osimhen was the last piece of the puzzle in this Chelsea attack. Now that we don't have him, I'm concerned as a Chelsea fan myself. Josh, built my team for a wildcard 4 strategy, but do you think I should mini wildcard to make it to 6? Seems to be a lot of upside. My team is good, ranked 100k after 2 games without Haaland triple captain. So again, I don't really know your team, Josh, so I can't really answer that question, but a wildcard 4 strategy is still fantastic. The reason being is, if we take a look at the fixtures, I'm going to take a punt that this is the right one. There we go, beautiful. So if we take a look at the fixtures for those that are maybe deliberating when to wildcard, and again, I originally was looking to wildcard in game week 4. This is where we see some of the fixture swings, and a reason why I wasn't so excited about a game week 3 wildcard. So in game week 3, where managers are looking to move away from teams because they have a bad fixture swing, it doesn't actually happen until game week 4. So take Arsenal, for example. Those that are wildcarding in game week 3 probably feel like they have to force Arsenal assets into their teams because of the Brighton at home fixture. But game week 4 is where the fixture swing truly does happen with Spurs and City. So game week 4, you could go without Arsenal for 2 game weeks and then look to bring him back in as your mini wildcard. Brentford, again, if you were to wildcard in game week 4, it means that you could take a punt on Mbeumo if you wanted to. Again, with the likes of Aston Villa, you could jump in at any point, but if you wanted to, you could allow 1 more game week of information before wildcarding them in game week 4. And the other one, of course, is going to be somebody like a Newcastle. Spurs at home, while it doesn't look great, I do think from an attacking perspective, it isn't actually terrible. So you could play them in this week and then move away from them with Wolves, Fulham, City. Don't know why Man City are in blue. That's a tough fixture, but you could actually wildcard out of those players if you wanted to. What about Garnacho? Personally, I just want to see him actually get a start in this Man United team. I think it's coming, and once he does start, he's going to be a phenomenal option. But look at the fixtures of Man United. Isn't a time to buy here. Southampton away is a great fixture, but if we have no guarantees that he is actually going to start, we actually need to see that happen before doing so. Bench Wood or Eze? That is very tough. I think personally, if you have Wood, I probably would start him in this fixture. It's not ideal because I know, as I mentioned, Eze is one of those players that I think you just start each and every game week. But Chris Wood, with that fixture at home against Wolves, who looks so leaky against Chelsea, I think you probably are forced to start him. Now, what I want to do quickly is just show you some of the stats, because if you're just tuning in right now, guys, I made a transfer just to show you. I ended up bringing in Eze for Nkunku, but I want to give you a little bit of context as to why I've done so, because he is one of the most sold players going into game week 3. So controversially, Eze has become one of those players that actually managers are perceiving to be terrible, but I, for one, am actually quite bullish on him. I feel like we now are going to have a bit of stability at Crystal Palace. They've signed a new centre-back. They've signed Nketiah. I feel like Glasner has now had the kind of commotion of Guehi, Elise all happen. I back him as a manager, and I back Crystal Palace as a team. And Eze is the absolute talisman of all of that. So here are the midfield numbers for the opening 2 game weeks. And the one that I want to highlight is going to be Eze. Now remember, this is a player that is blanked in the opening 2 game weeks. But based on the numbers, I feel like he has been quite unlucky. 12 shots in total is fantastic. 0.94 XG, 0.3 expected assists. And as you can see in the expected FPL points column, 10.09 is what he's been expected. And he's only delivered 4. So, again, you can look at it 2 ways. You could look at it and say to yourself, you know, numbers only paint a picture. You have to look at the eye test. But when I watch Crystal Palace, I think it even more. I think to myself, how the hell Eze hasn't returned? And I think that's more of the case of it. You have to have a balance of both eye test and underlying numbers. And I think when I watch Crystal Palace, all I'm seeing is Eze at the heart of everything. And I'm seeing him whipping free kicks in on target. I'm seeing him on all set pieces. I'm seeing him drive through the fence. And I look at the numbers and think to myself, well, the eye test is good and the numbers are backing it up. So that is why I felt like Eze was a crazy sell for managers. And I know Chelsea away is one of those fixtures that you think to yourself, yeah, it's a tricky fixture, but is it? Is it actually a tricky fixture? Let's take a look at the numbers for Chelsea in the opening 2 games. So this is expected goals conceded. Chelsea in 2 games have an expected goals conceded of 3.2. Now, let's be real here. Of course, one of those games was against Man City, so that is always going to be a little bit skewed. But I just think Chelsea right now are not in a good place. I think they could win this game against Crystal Palace. I'm not sitting here saying that Chelsea are going to lose. But what I do think is that Palace with Eze absolutely have the potential to deliver in this fixture. So I do not think it's a terrible fixture at all. Hence why I thought Eze was a great transfer in this week. And for a long-term perspective, he is a great move. So Eze's in for my team for anybody that is wondering. Let's come into some of the chat a minute. So I'm a little bit behind on the chat. I'm just going to try and catch up a minute on it. Toby, what's your reasoning for not swapping Isak for Watkins? He has a better fixture this weekend and don't forward. Okay, so basically the reason why I personally am not going for Watkins is because, one, we haven't actually seen Watkins play a full 90 minutes yet. If we take a look at his actual numbers, and by the way, those that have been selling Watkins, I absolutely would not be selling him, but 64 minutes, 61 minutes, like, again, I expect those minutes to creep up, but until I actually see 90 minutes of Watkins, I've got right now 90 minutes of Alexander Isak versus potentially 70 minutes of Ollie Watkins, which is not ideal at all. So for me, Watkins is fantastic this week. If I could bring him in, I would. But I just don't feel like it's worth it at the expense of Alexander Isak for somebody who I think actually has an okay fixture at home against Spurs. So personally, Watkins is a phenomenal transfer for your weeks. But can it wait 1 game week? I think it actually can. I don't think it is a desperate transfer this week. That being said, would you be surprised if Ollie Watkins bags a brace against Leicester? Absolutely not. And that is why I'm saying I do think Watkins is a brilliant transfer in. And I just don't get why nearly 500,000 managers have sold Watkins. I think it's crazy. I think there's going to be some serious pain this week for those that did end up selling Watkins. And for those that are just jumping in the stream right now, just to confirm, I ended up selling Nkunku for Eze ahead of his price drop. I panicked a little bit last night. I was seeing all the deadline day stuff in the football world. I felt to myself, I need some drama in my life. So I ended up bringing Eze. Could be a little bit of a problem. The reason being is this. I don't actually know if I'm going to wildcard in game week 4 or not. If I had absolute concrete evidence that I wanted to wildcard in game week 4, I would have brought in Mbeumo, because for a 1 game week punt, it's fantastic. The thing we need to remember is that this season is different to all others. Whereas before, if you had a transfer, you'd use it before your wildcard, because once you wildcard, you'd come back to 1 free transfer. In this season, if you have 2 free transfers, you wildcard, you come back to 2 free transfers. So that's why I was a little bit and ahhing about what to do, because one thing that I could have done is that I could have brought in Mbeumo, wildcarded in game week 4, and then gone with that move. What I could have done is rolled my transfer, wildcarded, and come into 2 free transfers in game week 5. So lots of possibilities available, but I just felt bringing in Eze this week just kind of forced the inevitability of my team, and I just couldn't sit here and allow Nkunku to continuously fall in my team. I think Smith Rowe's a brilliant player, and being on my bench could cause me problems, but I have a piece of Fulham already in Muniz. Fulham have been recruiting in the attacking department, so could we see some rotation from Smith Rowe at times? Potentially. So that's why I went for the move, guys. I'm a little bit regretting it, but I think it's long-term the move that I want to go for. Bench Trossard or start Isak. For me, I would start Alexander Isak personally. Flynn, bench one of Muniz, Eze, Rodgers or Gibbs-White. I would absolutely not bench. I'm going to do elimination process here. I wouldn't bench Gibbs-White at all, and I wouldn't bench Muniz. So it's Eze versus Rodgers, and for me, I would rather start Eze than Rodgers. Rodgers has been great, by the way. Like, let's get some numbers up here, because I know a lot of people are actually debating like Rodgers versus Smith Rowe. So let's try and get up Rodgers and Smith Rowe right now as a bit of a comparison. Rodgers, Smith Rowe. Let's get these two boys up. So, oh, and what was the options? Eze as well. Let's get Eze in the mix as well. By the way, anybody that's wondering, this is taken from Fantasy Football Fix, all these numbers. So this is quite a popular discussion right now. Who should you bench between Eze, Rodgers and Smith Rowe? So both of these, all three of these, have played both games. Smith Rowe slightly less minutes, whereas Rodgers and Eze have played the full 90 minutes. So first and foremost, what we need to say is this. I think in terms of minutes, Smith Rowe is probably the one, if any, is going to get an early substitution as opposed to Rodgers and Eze. Now, in terms of numbers, shots, 12 shots for Eze is just ridiculous. 5 for Rodgers, only 2 for Smith Rowe, only 1 of those on target. So we need to remember that. XG is in Eze's favour. Smith Rowe at 0.45, Rodgers at 0.29. So again, you could paint a picture whatever you want. One of these is that Eze is just absolutely, for me, the guaranteed starter of the 3 because he's the talisman. He's going to get guaranteed minutes. He's on set pieces. His shot volume is fantastic. I don't think Chelsea away is a terrible fixture at all. So I think based on all that, Eze is the starter of the 3. Then it's a decision between Smith Rowe and Rodgers. Both have good fixtures, one against Ipswich away, Rodgers away against Leicester. I always lean towards the one that I think is more of a minutes guarantee, and that is going to be Morgan Rodgers. In terms of the numbers, I'm going to be honest, none are actually incredible. Rodgers is okay. He's had 4 attempted assists. I do feel like if anyone was going to score, I probably would back Smith Rowe. But right now, I'm actually leaning towards who can I get 90 minutes from? And the answer is going to be Rodgers. I think both have good fixtures. So I don't think the fixtures really comes into the debate of what we have right now. How much do you think West Ham will improve under Lopetegui? Is Rodri back? So Rodri's been in training, but no guarantees whether he is going to start. And I think Lopetegui's West Ham have recruited really well. I don't think the game is actually as good as what a lot of people are saying for Erling Haaland. But based on my team right now, I just know if Man City score, and I always back City to score 2 or more goals, it's going to be Erling Haaland in the middle of it. So That is why I am leaning towards Erling Haaland right now. Partey is absolutely not an option, AB. Especially Marina obviously picked up that injury in training, so he's going to be ruled out for potentially up to a month. So I do expect Partey to stay as a CDM, but absolutely do not be buying him. No chance. Sorry guys, I got the hiccups right now. Whew. Liam, is De Bruyne a good game week 3 wildcard option? I think he can be. Taking a look at the fixtures right now for Man City, you can see here, you're bringing him in for West Ham, Brentford, then Arsenal, then Newcastle. I don't love the fixtures long term. I think the next 2 are good, but I'm a little bit concerned about what game week 5 and game week 6 looks like, and the introduction of the Champions League. So personally, I wouldn't be prioritising De Bruyne. I would much rather spend 1 million more and get myself someone like a Cole Palmer in the team, where you can see Chelsea's fixtures being much better. Remember, they're in the Conference League, so I think the squad that Chelsea have, Enzo Maresca could easily bench Cole Palmer midweek and play him for the Premier League game. So I would much rather spend 1 million more and get someone like a Cole Palmer as opposed to a Kevin De Bruyne. But he could be a fantastic differential if you want to go there. And a reminder, guys, if you're enjoying this stream, please do consider dropping a like. We always aim for 50. If you could help out, that would be amazing. And if you're not already, please do consider dropping a subscribe. I'm going to say that. Subscribe to the channel, if that is how we say it. So I'm just making sure there is no updates right now in the world of Twitter, because I want to make sure I don't miss anything for you guys. But I don't think I have. So I think we're good for now. I think we're good. And I want to drop a poll in, guys. I want to see who is your game week 3 captain. Please do let me know what your captain is, guys. So I'm going to go for Haaland. We're going to go for Palmer, Saka, and what would be another consideration? Mo Salah. Guys, let me know in the poll who you are captaining. If you're not captaining anybody in the options, just let me know in the chat who you are going for. Wildcard game week 6 or 4, that is going to be completely team dependent. So quite difficult for me to kind of have a blanket answer to that one. Should I play Dallo or Aina? I would play Aina 100% this week. Why do I have triple Fulham? Are you about to wildcard? I'm not. I actually think the opposite. I actually think Fulham's fixtures coming up are actually quite favourable. I know that they have West Ham and Newcastle, but what I've seen right now, I don't think Newcastle away from home is like a watertight defence. So I think Fulham for the next 4 are actually an okay ownership. Yes, I have kind of stumbled upon triple Fulham with the Solanke injury. It was never my intention to have triple Fulham. It was also to be Robinson, Smith Rowe, and keep Solanke. But with the injury to Solanke, my hand was kind of forced. I didn't love Brighton because of the fixtures that they had, even though on reflection, João Pedro probably was the better pick. So Muniz is in, and to be honest with you, would I be surprised if Muniz scores this week? Absolutely not, based on what we've seen so far in the opening weeks. Mystical Master was saying, what do you think about Luis Diaz? I think he's a brilliant pick. My only concern right now is also the addition of Chiesa. Could we see some rotation and minutes managed for someone like that? I think for the short term, Luis Diaz is absolutely locked into that team. And I think he's great. I think a double up of Jota and Diaz is brilliant. James, who's the best replacement for Solanke? Because I forgot to transfer him out and got lucky that Aina got 9 points off the bench for me. Yeah, so in terms of the best replacements for Dominic Solanke, of course it comes down to what you actually have available to you. But if we take a look at the prices here, we'll flip between fixtures. Obviously, if you can get to Watkins, that's going to be my number 1 pick. I know he's been poor. I know the minutes have been ropey, but I think the fixtures coming up is a brilliant opportunity to jump on Ollie Watkins. So first and foremost, if you don't have Watkins, I would go to Ollie Watkins. Outside of that, I wouldn't be going to Isak now. I wouldn't be going to Havertz now. Nicholas Jackson, if you're brave enough to go there, but again, I just don't feel that compelled to go there right now. So I think Watkins is very much the obvious answer. I do think Muniz is good, but I'd be tempted by João Pedro. I do think this is not a good time to buy him. But after this week, there are good fixtures here. And then you might be looking to wildcard around this period. Just remember, Rutter's been bought. There could be some rotation in that Brighton team that you need to be consideration of. PC Game Attack. Eze's a flop. He dropped in price too. I could be wrong, but if he doesn't perform, I'm selling him. Okay, so I would not judge this game week on selling him. The reason being is, look at that. It's a delicious fixture at home against Leicester. And I think the thing, when I was led in bed last night, deliberating my move, I was thinking about the teams in the transfer window, and I was thinking, what is the most important thing right now coming into a transfer? And I think while some players are really exciting and they offer good potential, we want minutes, we want talisman, and we want players who are proven. And I think Eze just ticks all of those boxes right now. I would have had him in my game week 1 team, but with the Man City situation, and it looked like Eze could have gone to Man City, it didn't make any sense to put him in the game week 1 teams, and I feel quite lucky that he hasn't actually punished us based on the numbers that we're seeing here. So I actually think do not be judging Eze based on this game week. Game week 4 at home against Leicester, I just think that's crazy to be selling him. So Eze's in, and for those that are wondering about maybe my team, I want to show you what it's going to look like in the upcoming game weeks. Now, game week 3 is pretty much locked in. I just can't see a world where I bench Eze for Smith Rowe with the numbers that I'm looking at from Eze. So we come into game week 4. This was the game week that I always intended to wildcard. So Henderson at home against Leicester, that is not a bad game week at all. And whenever I'm looking to wildcard, it's 2 things. 1, is my team in a world of pain? That's the first thing. If I need to make 6-7 transfers, that is a good enough reason to wildcard. The second reason is, and it's kind of separate to the other one, is there a fixture swing, which means that I have to bring in a certain amount of players? So it's one of those 2 things. Either my team is in absolute shit's creek, or I'm in a situation where I have to jump on 5, 6, 7 players because the fixtures are too damn good. So the first one we need to look at, is my team in a world of pain? So looking at game week 4, Saliba away against Spurs is not ideal at all, but do I feel horrendous having a piece of the Arsenal defence? The answer is no. I'm going to be honest with you. I do not feel horrible about having an Arsenal defender. Robinson at home against West Ham, perfectly fine. Trent at home against Nottingham Forest. So that's great. And then we've got obviously Hall away against Wolves. I mean, if he gets his place back, that's a player that could come in for that week. In terms of the midfield, we got Eze at home against Leicester, fantastic. Rodgers at home against Everton, great. Jota, brilliant. Saka away against Spurs. Now, one would argue that Saka away against Spurs is enough of a reason to sell, and I agree. That could be a reason, but also, Arsenal, Saka, I just don't really feel that compelled to always sell him, even though we'll come on to the next bit, the fixtures. Then the forwards, Muniz, Isak, Haaland, with those fixtures are fantastic. And I'm seeing a lot of people right now say, yeah, but we need to have Mo Salah and you've got to sell Haaland. But really? Like, do I want to sell Haaland at home against Brentford? Absolutely not. So when I was pre-planning, the reason why I done the Eze move was I looked at game week 4 and thought, am I going to absolutely wildcard? And the answer was no. So when we look at the fixtures, that's the most important thing now. Who do I not have in game week 4? Well, I'm not going to have Watkins at the time of recording. So could I maybe do a transfer to bring him in? Yes. So Watkins, that's one transfer that I would like to make. Brighton is absolutely a team that I want. But who is the player? I don't really want any defenders because I don't know who to buy. In terms of the attackers, João Pedro is really the only one, or Matoma, that I would like to bring in. But who would I rather have, Eze or Matoma? The answer is going to be Eze right now. So it's all about João Pedro. Yes, that is a good transfer in. So Watkins, João Pedro for game week 4. Chelsea, Cole Palmer is definitely a player that I would like to own. Palace, I've already got them in. Fulham, I'm tripled up in. Liverpool, Mo Salah, I would love to have that. Outside of that, I think that's the only players that I'm missing coming into game week 4. Now, they're 4 big players, and those 4 players, Palmer, Salah, Watkins, are all players that have high value, which means that we do probably need a wildcard to shift the structure of the team. But we need to look at the team and think, but who are the players that are being expended? So Saka out is absolutely a player that would be at the expense of somebody, and I feel fine selling Saka. But the one that really I don't feel happy about is selling Erling Haaland at home against Brentford. It just feels very, very not the right time to do so. So the reason why I kind of ruled out a game week 4 wildcard is because I feel fine not having Salah. I just don't really see it right now where I'm scared not to have him. So coming into game week 4, I could do a few things. If I feel like Isak is his time has come, an easy move of Watkins in for Isak, free transfer done, and I keep Saka. It's not ideal because I don't have Cole Palmer and I don't have, for example, Mo Salah. But again, do I not back Arsenal? I back him in every fixture. And Cole Palmer, while he's phenomenal, Chelsea, do I trust Chelsea each and every game week? The answer is going to be no. So right now, I don't feel like this team requires a wildcard in game week 4. I can get Watkins in, and I might have to go without Palmer or Mo Salah. In the worst case situation, I could take a -4 and sell Saka for Cole Palmer, but I just don't really feel like the team needs it, to be honest with you. Okay, I'm 0.1 million short, so I would need something to happen. But what I'm trying to say is this. I don't feel like the team needs it. I don't think the team needs a wildcard 4 right now. Wout Face or Mikalenko every day of the week. Owen on a wildcard. Which Liverpool triple up? Salah, Jota, Robinson or Salah, Trent, Robinson? Ooh, right now, so I think Jota, the first one, is the one that I would like to go for. But if I'm thinking about long-term minutes, I actually think I prefer Salah, Trent and Robbo. Madueke, I like it, but I just think his minutes are going to be risky. I think if we take out the hat-trick, we would be sitting here saying that Madueke could be a rotation risk each and every game week. Like, there is absolutely a world. Okay, let me try and get the team up a minute. Give me 2 seconds, guys. I have no idea what this is going to look like on your screen, so I do apologize. I might have to fiddle with the screen a minute. So, let me get up the team from yesterday. Which one is this on? Stats? Perfect. Okay, so the reason why I was so hesitant to bring in Madueke. So this was the team against Wolves. Okay, so what could change realistically? So the back 4 I think is going to stay the same because Reece James is injured. So the back 4 will be the back 4. The midfield 2 will remain the same for game week 3 because Lavia is injured and Enzo and Caicedo, even though they don't work together, are just going to play. Nicholas Jackson probably will play as the number 9. So I would expect Pedro Neto to come in on the left wing. Tick. João Felix. João Felix will absolutely get minutes in this team. And of course, Nkunku will come off the bench at some point. Cole Palmer is absolutely the one that won't get an early substitution. Now, the reason why I'm hesitant on Madueke, Enzo Maresca does love an out-and-out winger. And Madueke is the only one in our team that can do it outside of Pedro Neto. The issue is this. We have seen in games in pre-season and in the opening game week where we have a combination of Malo Gusto playing as an overlapping wing-back, a full-back, and Cole Palmer playing off the right and inverting into central areas. That is going to happen at some point, trust me. That is an issue for Madueke because if he needs a system change, the first thing that he will do is put Palmer on the right, João Felix in the 10, Pedro Neto off the left, Nicholas Jackson up front. And that will happen at times, meaning that Madueke's minutes are going to be a rotation risk later down the line. So while I'm not trying to be kind of scaremongering people on Madueke, I do think he's a good move for this game week. There absolutely will be a time where Palmer plays off the right and he has Gusto overlapping to create the space and Palmer drifts into central areas, which means Madueke's minutes are going to be a problem. That is what's going to happen. I do apologise to say that, but it absolutely will happen at some point because we've seen it already from Enzo Maresca that he isn't scared to play that sort of system. And again, for anybody that is just tuning in right now, I've got to give you an update on my team. And again, if you're not subscribed, please do consider smashing that subscribe button. I've said about it, I had this audacious goal of hitting 18k on the game week 3 live stream before the international break. We ain't going to get there, but if we could get close, that would be an awesome thing. And if you can drop a like, we always aim for 50 likes. We've smashed that. If we can hit 100, that will just be the icing on the cake ahead of the international break. So just for those that are jumping into the chat right now, those that have just come onto the stream, hello, morning, hope you're doing well. This is my team. I ended up selling Christopher Nkunku for Eze. Yes, it was a little bit of a deadline day kind of move, but I felt like Eze is just a player that I want long-term in my team, and I wasn't absolutely wedded to a game week 4 wildcard. So it meant I wasn't really wanting to go for Mbeumo as a 1 game week punt, because I felt like going for Mbeumo kind of shoehorned me to guarantee a wildcard in game week 4. I just didn't really want to have that kind of absolute locked-in strategy. And I looked at the rest of the players. I'm going to be honest, I just couldn't sit here and continue to see Nkunku's price fall, because it was going to fall last night to 6.3, and I absolutely can guarantee it will fall to 6.2 prior to the game week 4 deadline. So I would have to make an early move regardless. And that's why I felt like bringing in Eze this week was just the right move to make. The talisman, guaranteed minutes, on set pieces, brilliant underlying numbers. I didn't really know where else to go, and that was the move that I felt was best for my team. Luis Diaz was absolutely on the radar, but the Chiesa signing did slightly worry me, and also the Darwin Núñez suspension from international duty. I believe he is suspended for like 5 games, meaning that he's going to be sticking around with Liverpool. Could that mean more rotation for the likes of Luis Diaz in future game weeks? I think that could be a possibility, and the introduction of Champions League. All these things adding up, felt Eze was the guaranteed player that I wanted in my team over that period. Thoughts on Maddison? I'll tell you what, Maddison has been ticking over lovely. Let me get his numbers up. Now, when I say he's ticking over lovely, what I want to say is that's from an eye test perspective. When I've been watching Maddison, from an actual visual, he's been brilliant. And I can't lie, I haven't actually looked at the numbers for Maddison. So this is going to be the first time. So it'll be really interesting to see whether the eye test is actually supported by the underlying numbers. So let's take a look at Spurs in isolation. So here we have James Maddison in the opening 2 game weeks. So he's had 4 shots, 2 on target, 0.73 XG, 0.78 expected assists, 5 attempted assists, 1 big chance. Really, really, really solid. I would not put off anybody going Maddison, apart from the fact that their fixtures are pretty woeful. When we take a look at the fixtures here for Spurs, they're not even on here because they're so bad. So let me remind you of the fixtures that they do have. They're that bad, they're not even on the list. So this, I don't think, is a great run of fixtures. I wouldn't be buying Maddison ahead of Newcastle and Arsenal, but Maddison needs to be on our radar, because I honestly think he's starting to return to the player that we saw pre-injury last season, and I do think Ange loves him. It's just a case of he couldn't really trust him at one point. So that is kind of one thing that I need to say. Sorry, I'm just checking this a minute. Sorry, just had a message there. Let me just go back to the team, guys. Right. Evan's saying, please confirm who is the best to captain this week. Well, I put a poll in, and 66% believe is Erling Haaland, 18% on Cole Palmer, 7 on Saka, 10 on Mo Salah. So for me, I still think Erling Haaland is a fantastic pick, but I will say this, I do think Cole Palmer would be my captain if I had him in my team right now. I just think he's one of those players that has everything about him that could deliver this week. What do you think about selling Doku for Szoboszlai? Already have Jota and Trent. I don't love it. The reason being is this. You've got Trent, you've got Jota. I wouldn't be bringing in a third option like Szoboszlai that completely blocks you off bringing a Mo Salah or something into your team. I just think Szoboszlai is good. I don't think he's worth you allocating your third Liverpool spot to. Madueke in this week, wildcard game week 4. Yes, so I think Madueke for this game week in isolation is a good move. But equally, started in the Conference League. Could I see a world where his minutes are at risk? I think the answer is yes. I think he starts. Don't get me wrong, but as I've spoken about, I would not be surprised if we saw him come off, Cole Palmer come on the right if the game was in the balance against Crystal Palace. Because let's be real, I don't think Chelsea against Crystal Palace is an amazing fixture. Like, I think it's good, but I think we're being a little bit kind of brainwashed by the fact they scored 6 goals against Wolves from an XG of 1.7. I've always said this. Chelsea have good finishers, not Nicholas Jackson, but João Felix and Nkunku, all these players, Cole Palmer, good finishers, good ball strikers. So I don't think we should get run away from the fact they scored 6 goals against Wolves. I don't think that's going to happen each and every game week. If we now got this thought in our head that they're going to bang 6 goals against all teams, Palace is going to be a tough game. And I do think it's going to be an open game. So that maybe leans towards Palace, Palmer as a captain. Jackson, Eze is a dubious pick. And yeah, I do think he is controversial considering all the people that have been selling him. But as I mentioned, I really think the sales have been crazy this week. I do not get it at all. But I would be interested to know if anybody else has brought in Eze, like in like whether it be content creators, whether it be general managers. I feel like I'm probably in like the minority right now in terms of actual buys in for Eze. I mean, what are we looking at right now? Transfers in. I mean, he's not even on the first 2 pages. I'm probably being dumb here. I probably could just click on his profile, couldn't I, and see how many transfers in. I mean, am I the only guy who's bought Eze this week? Come on now. Surely someone else is a genius like me. No, I'm joking. I mean, if Morpay's been bought by more players than Eze, then that is crazy. Have I missed Eze, guys? Okay, I feel like I've missed him. I don't know where he is, guys. I don't know where he's on the list, but I feel like I'm the only one in the world that's bought Eze this week. So, fingers crossed for me. Bruno De Palma for a -4. No, I don't love it for a -4 unless you were doing a -4 and you were putting the captaincy on Palma. Even then I don't like it, but you could do it. Theo Gamer, why did you bench Smith Rowe? Yeah, it's a great question. And part of the reason why, the only thing about the Eze move, which I'm a little bit dubious about, is the fact that I have to bench Smith Rowe away against Ipswich. That is the main concern. But for me, I personally don't think it is I don't think it's a deliberation for me. Eze has to play if you own him because Chelsea are just a basketball team. They do not control games, and I think Palace have the players to really hurt Chelsea, especially in transitions. So I think Chelsea are a team to be got at, and that is why I do think Eze, Crystal Palace, is a good player to have. The big decision for me is Rodgers versus Smith Rowe. I could go all in on Fulham against Ipswich, but I think the fact that I've got Muniz just makes me think, I've got a little bit of coverage in Fulham, so maybe I do start Rodgers. And the thing that I said as well, Rodgers I know is getting guaranteed 90 minutes. If things aren't looking good for Fulham, if, they're not leading against Ipswich, and to be honest with you, I think Ipswich is going to be a tricky game. I mean, let's take a look at the numbers for them. And we have to remember that they have had very tough games in the opening weeks. So, Ipswich here, let's be real, I've conceded a lot, but they've played Liverpool and they've played Man City. So, we can't really read too much into this right now. I would like to think maybe we do see a resolute performance from Ipswich, and maybe I'm painting my own narrative here, but we'll see. We'll see. $74,000 have bought Eze, and thank you, Steamboat, for that. Okay, so a little bit more than I expected, which is good news. Smith or Eze, I have Muniz and Robinson. So based on my selection here, I'm going to have to say Eze because I'm doing it myself. It'd be a bit bad if I said something else. Who is better to start, Isak or Rodgers? I would go for Isak personally. I think really for me, it's a case of if you have Isak, you either sell or you start. I wouldn't ever bench Isak in any world. On penalties, I always back Newcastle at home. So yeah, I think that's absolutely fine. João Pedro or Welbeck, very difficult one to call, especially with the recruitment that Brighton have done. I think you are buying regardless, potential rotation risk. I just think João Pedro is the one that I would lean towards personally. Smoothie saying, am I wrong for transferring to Mbeumo, Collins and Nedeljkovic from Porro, Smith Rowe and Pau? I'm on a wild card right now. Okay, so if you want to, let's do this. I haven't actually, just a heads up, built a wildcard draft properly. So let's quickly do one on stream, and I need some help from everybody in the chat right now to help others build a wildcard team. First and foremost, I see we have got a super chat from Peter G. By the way, thank you so much for the super chat, Peter. That is massively appreciated. Very, very generous. Did you consider benching Isak and starting Emil Smith Rowe? So let's come back to my team a minute. Maybe I can duplicate a page here so I can leave this one up. Yes, I can. Tech whiz. So, Peter, did I consider benching Isak and starting Smith Rowe? Personally, no. So the reason being is this. I think for Isak, I think you either sell Isak or you start him. Whenever I look at someone like Alexander Isak, I know I'm getting guaranteed minutes first and foremost, whereas Emil Smith Rowe, we have no guarantees that he is going to start. He's going to play 90 minutes in both. Looking at the minutes that he's played, 63 minutes, 68 minutes. We have every reason to believe that Smith Rowe will play once again between 60 and 70 minutes. And firstly, 60 or 70 minutes of Smith Rowe versus 90 minutes Isak, who's on penalties, for me is a no-brainer. It has to be Alexander Isak. Now, can Smith Rowe deliver in those 70 minutes? Absolutely, especially with him having the better fixture. But for me, I think Isak is a no-brainer in starting teams if you're keeping. I just think if you're going to bench him, I would just sell him and bring in someone like an Ollie Watkins. So, Peter, thank you so much for the super chat, and hopefully that did answer it. If you have a follow-up question, don't put a super chat on. Make sure to prioritize it, mate, and check it out. Thank you, mate. So, guys, we're going to spend the next 5 minutes building a wildcard team. Now, if you're not wildcarding, don't worry. I think this is still going to be relevant because we're going to get an understanding of the players that we want to target. Now, a quick reminder. For me, I don't want a wildcard, but I will just put this up here. Wildcard, I would only consider wildcarding if you're looking to bring in 6 or 7 players or more into your team. So the first question you have to ask yourself is, do I need to make 6 or 7 transfers? If the answer is yes, then a wildcard is definitely on the agenda for you. The other thing that I said about previously is that is there a fixture swing where there are so many players that you don't have that you feel like you need to have in your team? Those are the 2 things you need to look at. Do I need to make 6 or 7 transfers because my team is in a world of pain? If the answer is yes, wildcard. If the answer is no, the next thing you ask yourself is there 6 or 7 players that are so much better than my team right now that I need in my team? If the answer is yes, wildcard. If the answer is no to both, do not wildcard. This is the pros of wildcarding in game week 3. Easy to jump on the fixture swings for Villa, Chelsea if you trust them, and it's a good time to move away from the likes of Newcastle and Spurs and Arsenal to some extent. And also, it's an easy way for you to change the team structure. Cole Palmer coming back on the radar, all these sorts of players means that you can have an easy way of doing Haaland out, Salah in, for example. The reason why I hate it, international break between game weeks 3 and 4, anything can happen, so you could build a perfectly good wildcard team. They all go on international break and we get injuries and you're back to square one once again. Is 2 game weeks of information enough information? I think the answer is no, especially with some of the new signings coming in. Let's take this for example. Nketiah coming to Crystal Palace. What is that going to do for them? We got people like Sancho. I forgot about Sancho coming in for Chelsea. What is that going to do for the team? The other thing, is it a week early for the fixture swings? Now, when we take a look at the fixtures here, we've spoken about this. I don't want to go into too much detail, but it almost feels a week early to get rid of your Arsenal with them having Brighton. It feels like a week early to get rid of other players, like even Newcastle, for example. So for that reason, I'm against a wildcard in game week 3, but that doesn't mean there aren't people on a wildcard in game week 3. So let's build a team. And as I said, guys, please put any players now that you think should be in a wildcard 3 team in the chat. If you could just put a name, that'll be super helpful. Anybody that's asking general questions, I'm just going to ignore for the next 2 or 3 minutes while we try and build a wildcard team together. But I'll also obviously try and input some of my own thoughts. So I'm just going to pop in some players that I think if you are wildcarding now, you kind of just by default have to put in. So again, anybody, guys, that you have a recommendation for, please do put in the chat, and I will be sure to include or at least give some consideration. If you're going to be putting in somebody like, I don't know, Jorginho, I'm just going to ignore that, okay? Just going to put in players off the top of my head, and then we are going to obviously come to some sort of conclusion here of who to go for. We're just going to put Bentley back in goal because I don't think there is a good goalie at 4 million. Again, we'll bring up the fixtures. Who do I look at in game week 3 and think I need a piece of? Like, again, building a game week 3 wildcard. If you want Salah, you want Palmer, you want Watkins, I think you probably have to go without Haaland, which is a really scary thought. We're going to ignore Newcastle. We're going to ignore Man City right now, I think, which is crazy. I think if you're wildcarding, unless you want to do a transfer soon afterwards, you probably ignore Arsenal unless you want to put Saka in for a week. We need Liverpool. We need a lot of Liverpool. I think we probably put in... Robertson, you know. We need some cheap options for future. So I think we're going to lean towards João Pedro. I think we're going to lean towards maybe a Smith Rowe. We're just going to drop him in for now. Salah, Smith Rowe, Rodgers, Eze, Palmer. Don't know if that's super strong. And guys, keep putting questions. Please put names in who should be on a wildcard team. This is a wildcard team only. Havertz, I don't love because the fixtures are tricky. Mateta, I don't mind. Could be a consideration. Doku, I don't love. Visser could be a consideration, but again, when we look at the fixtures for Brentford, I don't love game week 4 and 5, so I just don't really think that's a great option. So this is where we're looking at right now for a wildcard team if I was to do it. I'm just thinking about, you know, fixtures that we would like to target right now, teams that I would like to fall into my team. I would love Brighton, but I just don't really know who else to go for outside of João Pedro. We could possibly lean towards... Could we maybe back... You know what? I'm going to controversially put someone like maybe an Areola in goal. I know it's a bit controversial, especially for this game week, but I don't actually hate the fixtures over this period. So Areola can go in for now, but let me know players, guys. Muniz probably does make sense, doesn't it? But... Again, I do apologise, guys. I haven't, Yeah, Nedeljkovic could be a really nice option, actually, at this price point of 4 million. That probably is the 4 million that I would go towards right now. Tonali, no, I wouldn't be going there. Hudson-Odoi's fixtures take a real bad swing, so I wouldn't be considering it myself. 13.2 to spend on defenders. Realistically, we're going to be wanting some 4.5 million defenders in the team here. So when I look at the options available, maybe a Brighton defender. Could we lean towards maybe a Lewis Dunk for now? This is the one. This is absolutely the one to go for. But again, it feels a week too early to do it. So let's put Dunk in. And I mean, we got a lot of cash in the bank, guys. We got Trent, we got Robertson. I feel like we could go cheap again with the defence. I don't think we need a desperate defender. Who should go in defence, guys? Let me know. Concert, yeah. Pau Torres, I don't love with the fixtures. Pau Torres, maybe. Let's put in Concert for now. We got the double Villa, which isn't great. Sorry, we got triple Villa. We can't even do that because we got Nedeljkovic in. Aina. So basically, let's just put in any 4 million right now. Let's just put in... Oh! Robinson, surely. So we've got 4.2 million to spend with this team here, which is great. So it would argue, could we maybe do something like, if we're worried about Smith Rowe's minutes, let's say, maybe Smith Rowe out and we get a midfielder a bit more of a pricier section? Because again, forwards, like who do we want in the forwards? Yeah, like, I mean, Saka would be tasty, but he's 10.1. So we would have to make some sacrifices in the team. And then the question is, do we want double Liverpool defence? Probably not. So let's take Robertson out. Could we do... Chelsea defence? No. Minter? Yeah, he could be a good option, but I'm just a little bit scared of those minutes. Basically, guys, I don't want to waste your time, but I don't know exactly what my wildcard team would be, but the things that I absolutely do think are just locked in, okay, is I think you definitely need Watkins. I think you definitely need Salah, Palmer. I would have Eze personally. I think you need Trent. I think you could have Robinson in your team. Once you have that together, I think you have a pretty solid structure in place. And then it's a case of just fitting in the rest of the players that you would like in your side. So I would look something like this. Rico Lewis, I love, but I think he could be a minute's risk later down the line. So I would build something towards this. But I would say is you absolutely need Trent. I think you need Salah. And I think you would have Saka for this game week. Just going to drop my team back in, guys, for those that have tuned in. I am going to be running this for the next 25 minutes, guys, because I wrap up at 10 to do a TikTok live. So if you have any questions, please do put them in the chat. As I've mentioned before, guys, we are looking at hitting 18k before the deadline. Are we going to do it? The answer is going to be no, because we are still miles away from it. But if you're watching right now and you maybe do enjoy it, please do consider smashing that subscribe button. I think we're going to come short by quite a bit, but all I want to say is a massive thank you to everybody that has been tuning in so far. We have still got time, guys. We've got 25 minutes. So I want to try and get a bit of a Q&A session. So quick overview, okay? I've done a transfer. Nkunku to Eze has been done. More than happy with the move to an extent. And we'll see what happens over the international break. I just felt like Leicester at home for Eze is so good that I felt I needed to bring in Eze 1 week earlier. So he is in, and I'm happy with the team. And I think what's obvious right now is that Haaland captain is the pick for my team. Eze over Smith Rowe, I am happy with that. Looking at the numbers for Smith Rowe, looking at the minutes risk for Smith Rowe, Eze just has to be the play. And I think Chelsea defensively are still very, very poor. So the plan right now is just to be about all you guys. All about you guys. So for the next 20 minutes, all I want to do is sit here and answer all your questions with the help of course, Fantasy Football Fix. We can deep dive into stats. So if you guys want any comparisons with heat maps, with numbers, please do let me know. We'll get into that. So let's get cracking. Let's get cracking. I want to get one more poll in the chat. I want to think about a poll that you guys can help me with. So what is quite an interesting topic? Let's put in, who would you bench? This would be an interesting one. Who would you bench? Would you bench Rodgers, Smith Rowe, or Eze? Which one would you bench? For me, I've gone Smith Rowe. Okay, let's get into this chat, guys. Let's fly through some of these questions. So, start Rodgers or Kovacic? The answer there for me is going to be Rodgers, absolutely. Angelo saying, transfer Slanky out for João Pedro and Nkunku out for Eze. Is that good? On the face of it, if those are free transfers, yes, I do think that is good moves. João Pedro longer term is a good move, not necessarily this game week. Do I think Leon Bailey could be a good swap for Nkunku? Villa do have a good run of fixtures. They do have a good run of fixtures. My only concern, let me get this up for you. Give me a second. Give me a second. let's pop this up. I'll tell you what, we have not got... I'm trying to find out when the Champions League fixtures are. Have they announced the dates for the Champions League? Okay, so they haven't actually announced the dates of the Champions League yet, by the looks of it. But I'm looking at Aston Villa. Let me get up what I'm showing you right now. Trying to find Aston Villa, and you can see him in the middle here. So I don't actually think we have a date yet for them. But what I'm trying to say is this: if you bring in someone like a Leon Bailey, just be cautious that we have the return of Champions League football for Aston Villa, and I think they are going to try and play their best team each and every game week, because at the end of the day they're in the Champions League for the first time in forever. Is De Bruyne a valid option? He is, but I personally would rather spend a little bit more and go to someone like a Cole Palmer personally. Who should I start? Robinson? This is from Kian. Who should I start? Robinson, Saliba, Trent, Bellis, Konsa, 3 back. So I would definitely start Saliba with their home fixture. I would definitely start Trent. And it's obviously a debate between Robinson and Konsa. Personally, I'd rather lean towards the attacking potential of Robinson. So I would say Robinson, Saliba and Trent of that combination. Is Jota a better option than Salah long term? No. I think Salah is by far and away the better pick long term. And that is why I think we all went for Jota as a bit of a short term alternative. I think we know over 4, 5, 6 game weeks, and we've seen it with the numbers. Let me get them up for you. If we take a look at Liverpool in isolation right now, and this is why I'm not absolutely scared of not owning him right now. So these are the numbers for Jota, Salah and Diaz in the opening 3 game weeks. And we need to remember here that it's 2 game weeks worth of information. So we are playing off very little. But Luis Diaz has put up incredible numbers. The highest XG, the highest expected assists. Jota, more XG, more expected assists than Mo Salah. Salah, based on the numbers, has actually been the worst of the 3. Shots, yes, he has had more, but only 1 more than Diaz, the same as Diogo Jota. So the only thing really right now with Mo Salah is that he is locked in for 90 minutes. Now, will the inclusion of Chiesa possibly impact Salah longer term? Potentially. That is one thing that we do need to take into account. With the return of the Champions League, Mo Salah isn't young anymore. Could we possibly see rotation with Mo Salah? And I don't mean rotation from starts. I mean, could we possibly see substitutes with Mo Salah in the 75th, 80th minute that right now we aren't seeing? That is something that we definitely need to consider going forward with the inclusion of Chiesa, who absolutely can play on that right wing instead of Mo Salah. So something we need to consider, and based on the numbers, it's a reason why I am not absolutely devastated that I don't have Salah. The big thing, and of course one of the biggest factors, is of course Mo Salah being on penalties. That is something that we cannot forget about. Liverpool could have a terrible day at the office, they get a penalty, Salah scores it, 10-pointer, picks up all the bonus, and he's dominated Diaz and Jota. But based on what I'm seeing right now in the numbers, I actually think Jota and Diaz are still great options for our teams. Just going to put up the teams again, and let's fly back in. Charlie Burney, hope you're well, mate. Hi, Natro. Bought Eze last night, planning to go Isak to Watkins and Saka to Palmer in the next few game weeks. But if Isak falls, Watkins stays, or falls in price, I won't be able to. Who would you prefer if I can't? Right, so firstly, I think Isak to Watkins next game week is a good move. So in terms of who I'd prefer you to buy, I think I'd probably rather you do Saka to Palmer personally, just based on what we've seen. So that would be my preference of a transfer next week. But again, plenty to figure out next week. Do I always keep money in the bank? Sam would say, no, I do not. However, the injuries are slanky and the downgrade to Muniz meant that I freed up money in the bank. No, I do like spending money, but right now I can't really justify upgrading any other player with the additional 1 million in the bank for the expense of a -4, it's worth noting. Farah saying, please answer, should I keep Isak and Gordon? If not, who do I sell? Yes, I would keep him for this game week, then reassess afterwards. Start Aina or Isak for me every day of the week. Nathan, morning, struggling to decide who between Wood and Smith Rowe. Like both of their fixtures for today. Yeah, this is incredibly tough because, of course, with Chris Wood, I think he definitely will start, but we do have competition from Awoni on the bench. I probably would just lean towards Chris Wood personally, but it's very, very close between the two. Andrew, Doughton Hall will start. Would you transfer to Concert? No, I wouldn't be making a transfer. Can your squad absorb this game week with the situation? If it really can't, then I don't mind the free transfer. But do you not have another defender in your team that you could start over Hall? And again, guys, if you can, drop a like on the stream. We are only 8 away from 100 likes, which would be sick. If you can, that would be absolutely awesome, guys. Please do, if you are enjoying it. If you're not enjoying it, no problems. Do not worry about that. But if you are enjoying it, it'll be awesome to have you like the channel, like the stream, and subscribe to the channel. It'll be awesome. We are, of course, going to be slightly short of 18k subs going into the international break, but that is no problem because you guys have been awesome just subscribing as it is. Farah, replacement for Nkunku, very difficult for me to kind of like say exactly which one. I mean, we got some picks here that I really do like. Eze is one of my favourites just because long term I think he's great and I think the numbers have been good. Diaz is a brilliant double up, but you do need to note I think he will be a minute's risk, not starting but coming off early. And Mbeumo for me is a 1 game week punt if you are looking to then wildcard in game week 4. Sorry, burp then. Hutchinson is good, but I just don't love it right now. Samuel, should I spend on my budget or keep money to the side? No, I think it very much is a case of do whatever is available to you. So if a transfer is available, what I'm trying to say is don't just spend money because you have it. Go for the right player, and then if it so happens to spend all of your money, then happy days. You're utilising all the money available to you. But I wouldn't be just automatically spending all your money just because you need to. Go for the right player, and if it does so happen to be all of your budget, then it is what it is. Let me get back to my team a minute, guys. For those that are tuning in, I made a transfer last night. I sold Nkunku to Eze. Havertz, I like, but for this game week in isolation is great. After that, I'm not a huge fan of him longer term. Ray saying, start Smith Rowe or Rodgers. I don't own Muniz or Watkins. Yeah, so this is really tricky. I think, again, I always lean towards the minutes. I'm going to say Rodgers right now, but honestly, it is a coin flip between the two. It feels like one of those sort of sliding doors moments where one's going to score a brace and one's going to blank. It really does feel like that sort of moment. It's just what I've seen in the opening 2 game weeks. If the going's tough for both Villa and Fulham, I expect Rodgers to play 90 more than that of Smith Rowe. If Fulham are struggling, I think Smith Rowe comes off at 65, 70. I expect, on what I've seen, Rodgers to remain on the field, and I always try and play the minutes personally. Captain Saka, if you are feeling it, absolutely. I do not berate anybody going for a captaincy on Saka with that brilliant home fixture against Brighton. Who would you start out of Ahmad and Xerxes? I think it has to be Ahmad. I don't think we have any guarantees right now that Xerxes is going to start. So for that reason, I would lean towards Amad Diallo, who did start in game week 2. I'm asking this for draft. What do you think? Ajer, fine. Don't love it. Difficult to answer for a draft question, though. I do apologise, mate. Peter, hope you're well, mate. Any plans for using your free hit? No. Free hit is completely off the table. This is something that we leave until the second half of the season for things like blank and double game weeks, where it is really a powerful chip that can be utilised later down the season. Whereas the wildcard, we know we're going to get a second one later on. Free hit, we only get one, so we need to make sure we use it in the correct game week. Okay, guys, so I'm going to put it out there. This is your 5-minute warning. We're going to be wrapping this up in 5 minutes because I do need to jump on TikTok for a live stream. So if you have any questions, fire them off. But please do as well, if you're enjoying it, drop a like on the stream. And of course, smash that subscribe button if you are enjoying it. We're going to do a 5-minute quickfire Q&A. So drop them in now. I'm going to answer them. Everything after Steamboat. So Max Horgan asked, De Bruyne or Saka on a wild card? I personally would probably go for Saka and then jump to someone afterwards because he's a more expensive asset. But I would have Cole Palmer as a priority of all of those. Transfer Diallo to Rodgers. Oh, I think Diallo is long-term going to be a risk. I don't think it's a desperate transfer, no. See how the rest of your team looks. Is rolling the transfer more beneficial? If it's not, then yes, I like the move. Sell Quansah for Quansah. That's a mouthful, but yes, I do think that is a good move because Quansah is just a risk. Where am I? What do you think of Costa from Villa? Not sure who that is, mate. If you mean Quansah, yes, I do like him. Angelo, who should I bench between Smith Rowe, Rodgers, Eze, or João Pedro? Realistically, I just rate the Arsenal defence, so I am going to say João Pedro myself. Saka or Son on the wildcard? For me, it would be Saka still. Which one player would you start? Doku, Rodgers, or Porro? Of the bunch, I mean, if you have Doku, I think you probably do just start him and hope for the best. But he is the biggest minutes risk, it is worth noting. You will get 90 minutes from the other two. Start Eze or Hudson-Odoi. Really difficult, but if you have Eze, I'm always going to back to start. Marcus, what do you think of Solanke and Hall to João Pedro and Palmer or Solanke to Watkins? Would have done it yesterday before the price rises. So, I mean, the first moves that you mentioned are really good. I don't know how you're doing Hall, though, to João Pedro. So I'm a little bit confused by that. But Solanke to Watkins, if it's a free transfer, is a great move. Bench Eze, Smith Rowe, Vardiel or Robinson. I would probably bench of that Smith Rowe or Vardiel, probably. And I think if you own Vardiel, you have to play him in every fixture. So the answer would be Smith Rowe, but it's very difficult. Martinez or Flecken to buy? I think the answer would be probably Martinez if you can afford it. Immortal technique, start Aina or Robinson. That is such a tough one. I always back the home fixture, but they have got a game against Wolves who can score goals. Robinson probably has a little bit more offensively to offer. Probably am going to back Aina just because of the home fixture, but I'm going to be honest, mate. If it was me, I would go Robinson because I think the upside is there for him. So I'm going to say Robinson, but just based on the home fixture, it would be Aina. Sell Quansah or Barco and Tahubra. I would say Quansah because you're going to have more money available to go to other options, hopefully. And to who, it depends on your budget available, mate. I think if you need a 4 million, you go to Nedeljkovic at Aston Villa. Saka out for Palmer this game week? No, I would not be advising it this game week. Brandon Robinson, Muniz and Eze or Bassi, Welbeck and Diaz, the first option every day of the week. Bassi, damn. Abbas, would you do Solanke to Watkins for a hit? Otherwise, I have to play Munoz. I don't love it for a hit, so I probably would just play Munoz. Unless you see Watkins as a 4-game week option, then maybe, yes, you could justify it. Not Hall Gordon, Marcus is saying. So, Marcus, your question was, would you do Solanke and Gordon to João Pedro and Palmer? I would just do Solanke to Watkins, personally, if you can afford it. I am capping Salah for the 3rd week in a row. Truth in plain sight. Hope that pays off for you, mate. Fingers crossed. Take Saka out for Palmer. No, we'll not do that. Sweet. What about Delap? Don't love it. Start Jota or Eze. Whew. I think if you own Jota, I think you just have to play him. So I'm going to say Jota. Covered that one off. Kulusevski to Rodgers or Isak to Watkins. 1 free transfer remaining. So, firstly, mate, I would say you could roll. Kulusevski's going to play as a number 9, so that's great. I don't think you'd be selling Kulusevski to Rodgers this week, especially that Newcastle defence. And then Isak to Watkins. I mean, it works, absolutely, but I think I'll just roll the transfer, mate. If I had to do one of those, probably just get Watkins in. Who to bench, Udogie or Hall? I would bench personally Hall because I have no guarantees if he starts this week. Right, guys, we're going to have to wrap up that. I had a hard deadline of 9:55, so I do have to conclude this here. If you enjoyed the stream, please do make sure you drop a like on the way out. And of course, smash that subscribe button. I always really appreciate you guys for doing so. Just to conclude, ended up selling Nkunku to Eze. This is my team pretty much locked in. I am more than happy with it. Yes, Smith Rowe could hurt me on the bench, but after looking at the numbers, looking at the minutes, I feel pretty happy benching him this week. So that is the team. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Have an amazing day. Take care, and I will see you very, very soon. It is the international break, so I'm going to take a few days off. We'll probably do a Sunday evening video. When are the fixtures happening? Yeah, we will do a Sunday evening transfer plan video Sunday night, and then I'll probably have 5 days off because there's nothing to talk about, and then we'll be back for game week 4. Have an amazing one, guys. Take care, and I'll see you real soon. Cheers.